3 in the morning. Nora Baxter. Wait, checking the name list. Nora Baxter appears in the uploaded file. Let me proceed with completely new names. Let me just write the story directly. 3 in the morning. Adrian Kowalski had not slept in 31 hours. He was sitting at his desk on the 14th floor of Kowalski Medical Group's Toronto headquarters, a building he had inherited from his father, rebuilt from near bankruptcy, and turned into one of the largest private hospital networks in Ontario. Wearing yesterday's dress shirt and tomorrow's regrets, staring at a spreadsheet that made absolutely no sense. The numbers were wrong, not slightly wrong. Catastrophically, humiliatingly, how did 3 certified accountants miss this wrong? The audit was in 6 hours. Adrian had sent his CFO home at midnight. He had sent his financial controller home at 1. He had sent his assistant home at 2, partly because she kept offering him tea in a way that suggested she thought tea could fix a $4.2 million discrepancy in the quarterly billing reports. It could not. Nothing could fix it. Adrian had been a healthcare executive for 11 years, and he had never seen numbers behave this way. Columns that should have balanced, refusing to balance. Figures that should have canceled each other out, multiplying instead. It was like the spreadsheet had developed a personality, and that personality was hostile. He heard the cleaning cart first. That specific sound, wheels on tile, the soft rattle of spray bottles, had become the background noise of his late nights. He barely registered it anymore. What he did register 20 minutes later was silence. The cart had stopped, the footsteps had stopped, and from the small conference room at the end of the hall, the one with the glass walls and the whiteboard that still had last Tuesday's budget projections on it, a bluish glow was flickering. Adrian stood up slowly. He was a reasonable man. He was also a man who had once found a raccoon in his hospital's supply closet at 2 a.m. and spent 20 minutes trying to negotiate with it. So his threshold for strange late-night discoveries was fairly high. He walked down the hallway in his socked feet. He had taken his shoes off at 11 and pushed open the conference room door. A young woman in a gray cleaning uniform was sitting at the conference table. She had pulled one of the laptops toward her, his financial controller's laptop, which was absolutely not supposed to be unlocked, and her fingers were moving across the keyboard at a speed that seemed frankly unfair for 3 in the morning. Her hair was in a practical bun held together by what appeared to be a pencil and sheer optimism. She had not looked up. That laptop, Adrian said carefully, is password protected. It was, she said, still not looking up. The password was written on a sticky note under the keyboard. Yellow sticky note, little maple leaf drawn on the corner. Very festive. Not very secure. Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. Also, she continued, you have a phantom billing loop in columns R through AB. It's been duplicating charges from the Mississauga clinic and routing them through a dormant cost center. Whoever set this up either made a very impressive mistake or a very deliberate one. Adrian walked further into the room. He looked at the screen. He looked at her hands. He looked at the screen again. Who are you? He said. She hit a key, sat back, and looked at him for the first time. Her name, she said, was Petra Vance. She was 29 years old. She worked the overnight cleaning shift, had been doing so for 8 months, and she had a very specific problem. When she saw something broken, she could not leave it alone. It was not a quality she had chosen. It was simply the way she was built. She had noticed the financial controller leaving the laptop open last Thursday, just for a moment, just long enough, and she had seen the spreadsheet, and she had seen the error, and she had thought about it for 6 days, and tonight she had decided she needed to fix it. You decided, Adrian repeated. The numbers were wrong, Petra said, as if this explained everything, because to her it did. Adrian pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. Outside, Toronto was doing what Toronto does at 3 a.m. in November, being very dark and very cold and completely indifferent to the crises of the people inside its buildings. He looked at the screen. He looked at this woman in a cleaning uniform who had just identified in 20 minutes the error that 3 credentialed accountants had missed in 3 weeks. Walk me through it, he said. She did. She pulled up column after column, cross-referenced against the billing codes, showed him exactly where the duplication began. A single transposed digit in the Mississauga Clinic's cost center code, causing every 3rd invoice to be counted twice and routed sideways into a dormant account. Simple, once you knew where to look. Devastating if the auditors found it first. Adrian listened. He asked 2 questions. She answered both of them before he finished asking them. When she was done, he said, How do you know how to do this? Petra looked at the screen. My mother kept the books for her restaurant for 20 years, she said. I grew up watching her. When she got sick, I kept them for her. When the restaurant closed, she stopped briefly, then continued in the same even tone, I kept doing it. For other people. Informally, Adrian said. I don't have a CPA designation, she said. She said it the way someone says a fact, not apologetically, not defiantly, just plainly. I took the courses online. I passed the practice exams. I couldn't afford the registration fees at the time, and then I couldn't afford to stop working long enough to complete the placement requirements, so. She gestured at the gray uniform. Here I am. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Why didn't you just leave a note, he said. On my desk, or you could have emailed someone. You didn't have to. I emailed the general contact address 4 days ago, Petra said. I got an auto reply telling me my message was important and someone would be in touch within 3 to 5 business days. Adrian made a note to have a conversation with whoever managed the general contact address. Fix it, he said. Whatever you need. Fix it before 6 a.m. Petra looked at him for a long moment, as if checking whether he was serious. He was serious. She turned back to the screen. Adrian went and got 2 cups of coffee from the machine down the hall. The bad machine. The one that made coffee that tasted like regret filtered through ambition, and came back and set one beside her without asking, and sat in the chair in the corner and watched her work. She worked the way very few people work, without hesitation, without second-guessing, without the performance of effort that most people put on when they know they're being watched. She found the error's root, isolated it, corrected the cost center code, and then, without being asked, traced every downstream transaction affected and flagged them in a separate column with notes for the auditors explaining exactly what had happened and why. It took her 2 hours and 40 minutes. When she was done, she closed the laptop, picked up her pencil from where it had fallen, and stood up. The flags in column AJ will give the auditors everything they need, she said. The explanation in the notes should be clear, but if they have questions about the Mississauga records specifically, the original invoices from March are the key ones. Thank you, Adrian said. She nodded once, picked up her cleaning caddy from the floor beside the door, and left. Adrian sat in the conference room for a long time after she was gone. The spreadsheet was open in front of him. The columns balanced, the audit could proceed. Everything was fine. He thought about a woman who had emailed a general contact address about a $4.2 million error and received an auto-reply. He thought about that for a while. He found out the next day that her full name was Petra Vance, that she had worked the overnight shift without a single absence or complaint in 8 months, and that her supervisor described her as extremely thorough, almost annoyingly so, reorganized the entire supply closet in the annex building without being asked. He found out from HR that she had applied for a junior accounts clerk position at the Mississauga clinic the previous spring. She had passed the skills assessment, scored in the top 2% of all applicants, which HR mentioned in the tone of someone who had just discovered something mildly embarrassing, and been moved to the shortlist, and then the position had been put on hold due to budget reviews, and she had never been contacted again. She had applied for a cleaning position 3 weeks later. Adrian read this file on a Tuesday morning in his office, with a cup of better coffee than the conference room machine made, and felt the specific discomfort of a person who runs a large organization discovering that his large organization had done something he was not proud of. He called his director of operations. The overnight cleaning contractor, he said. Petra Vance. What's her current employment situation? She's contracted through CleanCore, his director said. Not a direct employee. Why? Because, Adrian said, she identified and corrected the billing error that 3 of our accountants missed in approximately 3 hours at 3 in the morning using a laptop that should have been locked. There was a silence. The laptop, his director said carefully. That should have been locked. We'll discuss that separately, Adrian said. Right now I want to talk about Petra Vance. He did not manufacture an excuse to speak to her. He waited until the following evening, near the end of the shift, and went to the 14th floor, where he found her working her way methodically along the corridor with the efficiency of someone who treats every task as worth doing properly. She saw him coming and stopped. She did not look surprised, exactly. She looked the way someone looks when they've been half expecting something and are not sure yet whether it's good or bad. Mrs. Vance, Adrian said. Mr. Kowalski, she said. She still had the pencil in her bun. He said, the audit went well. I heard, she said. Good, he said. I read your HR file. Something shifted in her expression briefly, not quite defensiveness, not quite weariness, something in between. Okay, she said. The position that was put on hold, he said. The accounts clerk role, it wasn't filled. It's still open. Petra looked at him steadily. I don't have the CPA designation, she said. The posting required it. The posting, Adrian said, was written 18 months ago. I'm allowed to revisit the requirements. She was quiet for a moment. Outside the windows, the city was doing its evening thing. Lights coming on, traffic thinning, the specific quality of a Tuesday night in November that is neither dramatic nor particularly cheerful. "Are you offering me a job because of what I did the other night?" she said. "Or because you feel like you owe me something?" Adrian considered this. He appreciated the question. It was the right question to ask, and most people would not have asked it. "Both," he said honestly. "And because you're clearly better at this than the people I'm currently paying to do it, which is a problem I have some professional interest in solving." Petra looked at the cleaning caddy beside her. She looked at the corridor. She looked at him. "I'd need to finish out my notice period with Clean Core," she said. 2 weeks, of course," he said. "And I want to complete the CPA registration," she said. "On my own time, my own cost. I don't want it to be a condition of anything." "Understood," he said. She nodded once, the same way she had nodded the other night, as if the matter was settled and she had already moved on to the next item. "I'll email HR," she said. "Don't use the general contact address," Adrian said. For the first time since he had met her, Petra Vance almost smiled. The almost smile lasted until the next week, when things got complicated. His VP of Finance was a man named Desmond Reese, 22 years with the company, educated at Queen's, credentialed everything, the kind of person who used the word governance with great sincerity. When Adrian told him that he was bringing on a new accounts analyst who had identified the billing error, Desmond had been supportive. When Adrian mentioned that this person was currently the overnight cleaning contractor, Desmond had become notably less supportive. "I'm not questioning her competence," Desmond said in a tone that clearly questioned her competence. "I'm saying the optics are unusual." "The optics of hiring someone competent?" Adrian said. "The optics of bypassing the standard hiring process," Desmond said. "For someone without credentials. Brought in through personal intervention." Adrian looked at him. "She scored in the top 2% of our skills assessment," he said. "The skills assessment for a junior clerk role," Desmond said carefully. "Right," Adrian said, "the role she applied for, which we put on hold and forgot to tell her about." Desmond said nothing. This was because there was nothing good to say. "Prepare the onboarding documentation," Adrian said. Petra started on the first Monday of December. She wore a navy blazer and the expression of someone who had learned not to expect things to go well, and was cautiously, privately, beginning to revise that expectation. Desmond had her assigned to reconciliation reports, background work, nothing client-facing, the financial equivalent of cleaning the corners that no one looks at. Petra did not complain. She did the reconciliation reports. She did them 3 days ahead of schedule and left detailed notes in the margins that identified 2 additional discrepancies no one had caught, each of them minor, each of them the kind of minor that compounds over time into something very unminor. Her desk neighbor was a junior analyst named Chloe who had graduated from Ryerson the previous spring and was, initially, visibly unsure what to make of someone who'd arrived from the cleaning contractor. By the end of the second week, Chloe was quietly asking Petra questions about the pension fund reconciliations and writing down her answers very carefully. Adrian noticed. Desmond also noticed. Desmond noticed the way a person notices something they had hoped would go away on its own. In the third week, Desmond called Petra into his office. Adrian found out about this meeting afterward from Chloe, who had been worried enough to mention it to the director of operations, who had mentioned it to Adrian's assistant, who had put it in his calendar as a general FYI. According to Chloe, Desmond had told Petra that her work was fine, but that the team had a particular culture of professional standards, and that given her non-traditional background, he wanted to ensure she understood the importance of deferring to experienced colleagues on matters of financial judgment. He had also asked, with great delicacy, whether she had considered that her CPA studies might be better pursued in a different context. A smaller firm, perhaps, where her skills would be, and here he had chosen his words with visible care, more proportionate to the environment. Petra, according to Chloe, had said, "Thank you for your feedback," and left. She had then returned to her desk and completed the month-end variance analysis 2 days before it was due. Adrian read through the variance analysis that evening. It was meticulous. It was also, in 2 places, quietly brilliant. She had flagged a pattern in the equipment leasing costs that suggested a vendor contract was being auto-renewed without competitive review, costing the organization approximately $180,000 per year in unnecessary fees. He called Desmond at 7 the next morning. "The vendor contract review that Petra flagged," he said. "The leasing costs, how long has this been going on?" Desmond was quiet for a moment too long. "That's something I'd been meaning to address," he said. "How long?" Adrian said. Another pause. 3 years, Desmond said. 3 years. At $180,000 per year. Adrian did the math without effort. Desmond, he said very calmly, I'd like you in my office at 9. What came out of the meeting with Desmond was not comfortable for anyone. It was not the kind of dramatic revelation where a villain confesses and is escorted out by security. It was quieter and more dispiriting than that. A series of decisions that had each seemed, in isolation, defensible, but which added up to a pattern of letting things slide when the things that were sliding benefited people Desmond was comfortable with, and of creating friction when the things being examined made people uncomfortable. Including him, he hadn't fabricated anything. He had just arranged the light carefully so that certain things remained in shadow. The vendor contract had a connection to a consulting firm that employed Desmond's former business school classmate. It was not illegal. It was not precisely corrupt. It was the small, grinding machinery of people protecting people they know, at the cost of people they don't. Adrian accepted Desmond's resignation at the end of January. He did it without drama, because the situation had been dramatic enough, and because Desmond had, underneath everything, been good at his job for 22 years, and because life is long and complicated and Adrian had no appetite for public humiliation. He announced the VP Finance vacancy internally in February. Petra applied for it. Of course she did. She was not the only applicant. She was not the most credentialed applicant. She was, by the time Adrian had read all the applications and sat through all the interviews and thought about all the numbers she had found in the dark and at 3 in the morning and in the margins of reports no one was watching. She was the person he trusted most with his company's money. He called her in February on a Wednesday evening on her cell phone rather than her work line, because it seemed like the kind of call that shouldn't happen in an office. VP Finance is yours if you want it, he said. You'll need to complete the CPA registration within 18 months. That's a formal requirement I'm not going to waive because you won't want me to, and also because you'll have it done in 6. There was a pause. Okay, Petra said. Okay, you want it, or okay, you're processing, he said. Both, she said. An echo that neither of them acknowledged, and both of them noticed. He said, I'm sorry about the general contact address. Another pause shorter. I know, she said. Outside his office window, Toronto in February was doing what Toronto in February does, being gray and cold and somehow still entirely itself, stubborn and permanent and lit from within. He thought about a woman sitting at a conference table at 3 in the morning, fixing something broken because she was simply incapable of walking past it. The audit findings are being filed next week, he said. The external auditors mentioned the correction notes in column AJ specifically. They said whoever documented it had an unusual eye for detail. Did you tell them who it was? I said it was a member of the finance team, Adrian said. I thought you'd prefer it that way. I would have, Petra said. He said, you start in the new role on the 1st of March. I'll need to finish out my notice period, she said, and he could hear, in her voice, the tiniest edge of something that might have been humor. 2 weeks, he said. It's only fair, she said. After they hung up, Adrian sat in his office for a few minutes, doing nothing in particular. The city outside was quiet in the way cities are quiet late in the evening when everyone has gone home and the buildings are just buildings again, not ambitions or failures or addresses. He thought about his father building this company. He thought about the numbers in column AJ. He thought about a sticky note with a maple leaf on it, under a keyboard, and a young woman who had seen something wrong and could not make herself leave it alone. He thought that some things, when they break, find the right person to fix them. And some people, when they're overlooked, find their way to exactly where they're supposed to be, anyway. Not because the system worked, but because they were stubborn enough and good enough to make it work for themselves. He turned off his desk lamp. He went home. For the first time in a long time, he slept well.